to call the council meeting to order at 1:02. The machine is open. All right. Shoot it at the. Let me see her. Maybe you got to press it over here. There you go. You can't. You ain't got it. So that they have 6 members present. Mr. Black is out of the chambers, but he's here. At this time, we'll do a prayer with Mr. Councilmember Juneau and the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Burke.
We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom, and we pray for our world leaders to know how to obtain world peace. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honest humility and equality to all. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do that which is right.
Make an announcement that Ms. Salvant is still out ill. Also, Ms. Nicole Williams wouldn't be able to be today because she has some medical issues of concern as well. So we hope that they heal very quickly so that they can be back in the fold of taking care of their business. Okay. Yeah. Do we have any referrals at this, withdrawal at this time? Councilmember Black? Councilman Lapine? 6F deferred. Mr. Gino?
6-0 deferred.
6O deferred. Mr. Roussel?
Yes, on behalf of Ms. Trufant, I believe we're going to defer item 683.
683 is deferred.
And on yes, yes. You, what you want to defer? No, I don't think so. I think she wanted to move forward with that one.
You want to just pass over that?
And for me, I'm going to have item T will be withdrawn, and it will be handled under the Port Authority meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Blake? Yes, sir. So T will be withdrawn. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Sorry. So T will be withdrawn. Ms. Simon also asked that the discussion on the pumpkin trailer be deferred.
Which one is that? What's the number? of that?
H,
H.
7H, and
Deferred.
also her update on B be deferred.
B is deferred.
And on F, for Walker Road, I want to thank the administration for finally taking some action. That will be withdrawn.
F is withdrawn.
Let's see. Okay, at this time, I believe that's all I have for deferrals.
Okay, I have J to withdraw. Under 7J is withdrawn. 7J, I'm sorry. Mr. Burt, Councilman Burt. Councilman Ashcombe. Okay.
And let me revert back to
All right, Mr. Russell.
6A1 will be deferred in light of the other item being deferred as well. So there'll be no executive session.
Six A1.
1A1, excuse me.
Ah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
so you're deferring 1A1?
Correct.
Okay. Any more?
Mr. Russo.
Session?
Yes.
All right, with the request of Mr. Black, I will not defer the item.
Any others? Any others? You haven't missed it, Bob? You haven't missed it? A3 is deferred. 6A3 deferred. 6F is deferred. O is deferred. T is withdrawn. 7B is deferred. 7F is withdrawn. H is deferred. And J is withdrawn.
Do we know anything about 7G, because Ms. Williams is not here?
7G, you,
G. Deferred.
John will move executive session again. Sorry.
what is G?
Ms. Williams is not here, but I assume G will be deferred, 7G.
7G, all right, let's go to 7G.
And at the second request of Councilman Black, I will defer item 1A1.
Executive session is deferred. All right?
Yes.
At this time, now we'll move towards the agenda items. Proclamations, do we have any? Status report by the President's office. Anybody handling that? He's not here, okay. We'll revert back to when he comes in. 2, bids and advertisement. Do we have any? Beer and liquor license, do we have any?
Aye.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Black?
Pocket Billiards and Bar LLC. 102 Woodland Highway, Suite 1, 2, and 3, Dulces, Louisiana 70037.
A special events, Citizen Police Academy Bonko Party fundraiser at the Belchase Auditorium on July 29th.
Mr. Councilman Juneau?
I have none.
Councilman Roussel?
None.
I have none. Councilman Burt, none. Councilman Lapine, none.
I just handed
Do I hear a motion to offer alcohol and liquor beer permits?
I'll offer.
Offered by Lapine, second by Councilman Acecone. Are there any questions from the table? Audience, hearing none, the machine is open.
Mr. Bartholomew, I know we voted already, but I just want to make one quick comment. I had deferred mine last time, so I can research any ordinances that prohibits anybody from getting a liquor license if they're not a resident for 2 years. That was a 1969 ordinance that was amended in 1992, so there is no prohibition against that. That's why I moved forward with mine. Just wanted to clarify my statements from last time.
Building permits, A, construction.
4A1, Shell Pipeline Company, application number 2017-389, dated May 24, 2017. Repairs at 2 anomaly sites on the existing Delta 20-inch pipeline near Grand Bayou area. Councilmember Trufant Salvant.
Mr. Roussel offers from Mr. Salvant, a second. Then questions from the table? Audience, the machine is open. Passes 6, 1 abstention. Introduction of ordinance and resolution. Councilman Black.
Yes, I have a couple.
You want us to come back
Yeah,
to you?
hold on one second, I'm just getting them in order.
Mr. Lapine, you have any?
None?
Mr. Juno?
I have one.
Okay.
An ordinance authorizing the acceptance of the donation by River Chase Properties LLC to the Plaquemines Parish government of a servitude over, across, and under a certain tract of land located in square 56 of town site of Belchas and town site 14 south, range 25 east, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
That's it?
That's it.
Mr. Roussel, Councilman Roussel?
Yes, a resolution requesting the Plaquemines Parish Development Board to conduct a public hearing to consider the amendment and restatement of the floodplain district zoning designation at Section 6, subsection M of ordinance number 142, the comprehensive zoning ordinance, and otherwise to provide with respect to thereto, and an ordinance to authorize the public sale for restricted use of approximately 609 acres of surplus Plaquemines Parish government lands in Plaquemines Parish, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
I have an ordinance to amend the 2017 general fund operating expenditure budget, Judge Division B, Summer Hoops Program Division, otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Councilman Burt?
I have 3. A resolution establishing the dates, times, and places for a mid-year budget review of the 2017 operating budget and the 2017 capital improvement budget, covering a period of at least 5 years, authorizing the council secretary to place the necessary public notice in the Plaquemines Gazette and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to amend the 5-year capital improvements plan, solid waste transfer stations project, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution authorizing the parish president to negotiate and enter into an agreement with Arlington Ridge Group LLC to provide consulting, advisory, and lobbying services regarding governmental representation at the state and federal level, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. That's all.
Councilman Acecone? Okay, hearing that, this time we'd like to revert
Mr.
back
Batal.
to status report.
John, I got mine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
An ordinance to amend the 2017 general fund manpower structure and operating expenditure budget, parish president department, and to authorize an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to amend the 2017 general fund manpower structure and operating expenditure budget, director of operations department, to amend the 2017 general fund manpower and operating expenditure budget, Director of Administration Department, and to amend the 2017 General Fund Manpower and Operating Expenditure Budget, Director of Public Services Department, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A a resolution confirming the recommendation of the parish president of Plaquemines for the designation of the director of the Department of Operations pursuant to Article 5, Section 501 of the Charter for Local Self-Government for the parish of Plaquemines, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution confirming the recommendation of the parish president of Plaquemines for the designation of director of administration pursuant to Article 5, Section 501 of the Charter for Local Self-Government for the parish of Plaquemines, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Kim, I have to get you another copy of that one because I didn't have the administration.
All right, we revert back to C, status report by the parish president. Mr. President.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, may we go to, I got a PowerPoint. I just would need a little time to set it up.
All right, we'll move on. 6A1.
An ordinance to submit a proposed charter amendment before the electors of Plaquemines Parish to create, define, and set limits upon an inspector general for the purpose of receiving popular complaints, investigating same, and responding accordingly thereto, in order to engender greater transparency, efficiency, accountability, and trust in local governments.
I offer and ask for a second. Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? For the lack of a second, it has been denied, but I'm sure we shall see it again. Number 2, please.
6A2, an ordinance to amend and adjust the fee schedule for emergency medical services provided by the Plaquemines Parish Fire Department and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
I'll offer.
Offered by Councilman Black. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second by Mr. Roussel? Councilman Black?
Yeah, this is a recommendation by the superintendent of fire, and I believe also after consultation with the administration. Correct, Director Giles? These fees have not been raised since 1992, and it's the recommendation to raise these fees. This doesn't really have an effect on the constituency. It's mostly a payment that would be made by insurance companies. I don't have anything else.
Any comments from the table? I'm not voting for it because anything that's overcharged by insurance will have to be absorbed by the people that use the service. I think we need to do something different, and if you want to raise, I think we need to go before the people, let them decide for the increase of any type of position where it will cost them more money. So that's just my comment, and at this time, I cannot support that. Audience, any questions from the audience? Hearing none, the machine is open. Passes 6-1. Next, please.
6A4, an ordinance to authorize and direct the parish president for and on behalf of the Plaquemines Parish government to enter into and execute any and all agreements necessary and proper for formal acceptance of the dedication of and granting a servitude for a public road by the owners of property through, on, and over which the present Liverday Lane located in Phoenix subdivision and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I offer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lapine? Second by Mr. Councilman Lapine. What is in detail is already a subdivision that has been approved way back when by this government, and we're just asking to do like all other subdivision in this parish, be a part of the public system. And by right, it's already established to be through the process of legal process that it should be, because we ran water line down the middle of the driveway and also sewer down the middle of the driveway. So that means, as a whole, the parish had accepted that responsibility to take it into public works. So with that saying, that's the reason why. And I offer that they look into it. It's not a permission at this table. It's a question for them to get that done. Anybody else?
My only concern is that, well, we're setting a precedence that we're going to take in less than what the subdivision ordinance calls for public maintenance on concrete roads. And I guess that question is
Okay, well, my question to that is, it was done.
But I wasn't asking you, I was asking the permit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. You didn't say that permit. That's why I answered.
No, I was, I know where you're staying, but I'm afraid what we opening the door
All right.
for.
Specifically, Councilman Russo, your question was again, I'm sorry.
All right, so this is a 30-foot road?
I'm not as familiar with it as Ms. Rose is, but it's my understanding, yes, sir.
And does it meet the subdivision ordinance?
This is an older subdivision.
Yeah.
It's an established subdivision. If you want to defer,
No, I want to get to the bottom of the issue because
if you want
what
to come
this
back
does,
to it.
what this does is it allows opening the door for many rock roads to be maintained by the parish. And so that's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of. Is that the accurate statement?
Well, it is the way I understand the subdivision as it stands now. I would think that would be an accurate statement. I don't know what type of precedence it would set. I don't know what the future would hold in this, but I think it would be a viable argument that that could be the net result.
Any other comments from the table? I'm sorry, you finished, Mr. Russo?
Yeah, John,
Yes.
is this, it's not a paved street, it's a gravel street?
Yes.
My understanding.
Has it
yes.
been maintained by the parish for all these years?
Periodically.
We-
Let me tell you this. The whole thing in a nutshell is once we went in with the sewer line, we have to maintain that. We went in with a sewer line and a water line. We disturbed them, so that meant we put a public servitude in. And there is a law that states once you do that, you have to absolve that as a public entity.
And just to be politically correct, I would think that would be a viable argument also.
And since you're riding the fence on this and not taking a position, I would ask that all of the litigation that we have gone on for doing private streets, does this cure all of that are in those lawsuits? Answer yes or no. Anybody that can
No.
give me an answer.
That is a good question, Mr. Russo.
No. Because this is a subdivision. This is not a street. This is a subdivision that has been approved by the government. Plaquemine Parish government approved this subdivision, and it's been developed. That's the bottom line. That's the intentions. This ain't not asking you to come up and do something out of the ordinary. It can't apply to the rules today because when it was accepted and approved, that's what we have to follow. And all I'm asking is that we follow those procedures.
And so I guess my only comment is that we approve private subdivisions all the time that they have to maintain. Now, this takes the burden off of the private subdivision that is created years ago and puts it on the government. And my question is, does it cure all of the lawsuit issues that we have now for rocking private roads?
Mr. Russo, it's not gonna affect the lawsuits per se. It's gonna be sui generis as to this road. Now, it might make an argument from a political perspective. You asked about precedent. I guess theoretically, any other councilman can come in and do the same thing with some other roads, should this happen here. But I don't think it affects the litigation.
Anybody else, any comments from
Yeah, one more thing. The
Yes, sir.
reason I'm saying this, John, is that any gravel road that has been maintained by the parish in 3 years is automatically a public road. And this is why I'm asking if this road was maintained by the parish. Has it been graded for the past 3 years by the parish? Anyone knows that?
Yes.
Okay.
My answer to that is that if the parish has maintained this for 3 years, then what do you need this for?
I wanted to do it legally, didn't get it done legally.
So it's
And the
been
problem
illegally
is,
done.
the problem is when I called GSI, they say no public street that they have on record is legal. So now I want this body to vote on that and make it legal. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking.
Mr. Bartholomew, I ask you to remove my second.
Okay, Mr. Lapine, remove his second. Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? Hearing none, it's done. Put it back on the agenda. Legal, I want to file an injunction against that being placed in the public entity because of the use of the Plaquemine Parish government been using this drive, this public street in that subdivision.
Okay, just give me the
And I forgot the terminology on the legal term for that.
And I don't know what kind of injunction you get ready to file, but you can't, if you want to file an injunction by yourself, you can't use the parish attorney to sue us.
Suing, he's not suing you, just didn't put him ratifying what's legal. All right, next item, please.
Item 6B, an ordinance to rescind, annul, and set aside ordinance number 15-71, adopted on May 28, 2015, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I offer. Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? Hearing none, motion dies. Like for a second. Next, please.
6C, an ordinance to amend the 2017 General Fund Manpower Structure and Operating Expenditure Budget, Ferries Department, and to authorize an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I offer. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. H. Kong. And the discussion from the table?
I have a
Yes, Mr. Burt?
Are these funded vacant positions?
There's a blank on line 20 that says no.
Yes, sir, there's a blank on line 20, funding source, and Reverend Giles said he'd rather defer it now at this point.
Third. Next, please.
A resolution requesting the council chairman, by request of the council, to authorize a special counsel contracted to represent the Plaquemines Parish Council to enact the authority provided to the council by the Plaquemines Parish Charter, Section 4.01b, and commence an investigation of possible malfeasance in office by senior members of the administration, as well as the failure to conduct essential services that are expected by and are essential to the quality of life of the constituency of this parish, and to subpoena to testify before this body is authorized by Section 4.01b of the Plaquemines Parish Charter any employees who may have knowledge of any such egregious acts and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Councilman Black is not at the table. We'll pass over. Read the next one, please.
6E, an ordinance to amend the 2017 Boat Harbors and Shipyards Fund operating expenditure budget, Boat Harbors, Point-a-la-Hash Department, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I offer. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Is there a second by Mr. Roussel?
Now, under the, let me
Go
get
ahead.
this understanding. You're taking the rental away from the portalets to buy a tractor or lawnmower. Are you gonna need portalets, or that's out the window?
I don't know, the way I'm looking at it, I think it's to take the money they have in the tractor department and put for portalets, if I'm not mistaken.
It says here that we are decreasing the rental and leases of portalets to put it into a tractor. So I wanna know if where we going?
That I don't know. I looked at it.
You wanna defer it till you get it straight?
Do you have any information on that? Defer it, please. Next.
6G, a resolution to authorize Plaquemines Parish government to expropriate, if necessary, land for lift stations and perpetual servitudes for installation and maintenance of a sewer force main overland located in Section 8 to 19, Township 15 South, Range 24 East, in Plaquemines Parish from landowners for appraised fair market value for sewer improvements included in the long-term community recovery program for Plaquemines Parish and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Councilman Burt,
I'll offer.
is there a second? Second by H-Com. Mr. H-Com. And a discussion from the table.
I'll just give a brief, this is
Mr.
part
Burt?
of the public sewage project that's going to run from Oakville to La Recite. And there's some, I guess, property that needs to be expropriated. And we have Mr. L.V. Cooley here if anybody would like any further discussion on the legal terms of it.
Mr. Coolidge, would you come up, please? Yeah. Give the overview of what we're doing. That's just for public information, that's why I'm asking. Go ahead.
I'm on.
Yes.
Can you hear me? All right. Sorry about that. We need to expropriate at least one tract of land right now. There's a federal lien against it, and the only way we can clear that up is through expropriation. To acquire it runs the risk that we pick up the exposure for the lien, and I don't recommend that.
Any questions from the audience? Hearing none, the machine is open. Passes 6-0. I'd like to go back and revert to Mr. Black's resolution.
Which one are we on?
D. Do you offer?
Defer.
Deferred, D is deferred. Next, please.
6H, a resolution authorizing the parish president or his designee to do all things necessary and proper to negotiate, perfect, and execute a CEA with the Plaquemines Parish School Board for the recreation use of the Old South Plaquemines High School / Port Sulphur High School athletic field by the residents of Plaquemines Parish and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Ms. Salvon asks to move forward with this.
Offered by Mr. Roussel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Burt. Any questions from the table? Audience, machine is open. Passes 7-0. Next, please.
A resolution authorizing the parish president or his designee to do all things necessary and proper to negotiate, execute, and enforce a settlement and compromise agreement in the case of Haley A. Hesney versus Plaquemines Parish Government et al., number 62-472, Division B, 25th Judicial District Court, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Mr. Roussel?
Yes, this is the litigation that I'll offer next. Well,
Is
it's
there a
under,
second? Second by Mr. Juneau. Mr. Roussel?
this is the litigation that was discussed in the executive session. I have the old copy here where it had Mr. Bartholomew's name on it, and also to lease. I think there's a correction in there. Do you have the corrected language?
I'll call the attorney. He actually to defer that.
Item will be deferred.
Next, please.
An ordinance to amend the 2017 operating revenue budget, firefighting fund, ambulances department, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I don't see the fire chief. I'm going to defer.
Deferred.
Defer the next one, the next.
Defer K. Defer all of them?
Yeah, J, K, L, and M, until the chief gets here, and N.
Sorry.
Deferred.
J, K, L, and N, M, N?
Well, you know what? I tell you what. Let's do this. Since I know he's not here, but I'm going to defer all of those. But let's open up K for discussion only. I'll offer for the discussion only. Actually, you know what, Ms. Marcotte, if you could just open up, if I can get a second for discussion only on M. You can read M.
Councilman Black offers M for discussion only. Is there a second? Is there a second? Second by Councilman Lapine.
An
Councilman
ordinance,
Black. Okay, I'm sorry.
an ordinance to amend the 2017 firefighting fund, manpower structure, and operating expenditure budget, firefighting department, and to authorize an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Councilman Black.
Yeah, basically, I received a request from the superintendent of fire to fund a couple positions and lift the freeze on a few positions. I know a few council members have gotten some calls in reference to these requests from the fire chief. I just want to open it up to anybody who wants to discuss that, or the administration, if the administration is in support of it as well.
Any questions from the table? Administration? Audience? Please state your name and your address.
Corey Ogle. I'm a employee with the fire department. I come forth to you today.
What's your address? I'm sorry.
111 Highland Avenue. 111 Lavender Court, Belchase. A little nervous speaking up here, so give me some.
Take your time.
I come forth to you today, just ask for some clarity on this. We have some positions that are unfilled right now that are actually funded, that a few of us are, well, I say a few of us, one of us right now are eligible to move up within the fire department, and the funds are there. I talked to one of the other guys talked to Mr. Surpass and to see if the position was still funded, and the position is funded. So my question is, I don't know if it's to the council or the administration, I'm just trying to find out, is there a plan with these positions, or are we just going to hire them because the superintendent says, hey, we need people? Because I don't see a strategy. With the budget constraint with the parish right now, I see the superintendent wants to swap a position from fire lieutenant to fire captain. If you ask me, just coming from an operator standpoint, a fire captain rides up and down the parish every day, checking on the different fire districts, different stations. He's not in the fire station. He's only responding to calls if he might be in that district. So if the fire is down the road, he's up the road. If the fire is on the east bank, he's on the west bank. Where he's not in the firehouse. Where I find a lieutenant is in every district. Like Belchase will have a lieutenant for the Belchase area, a lieutenant for the southern end, and a lieutenant on the east bank. These are the people that do the payroll. They're the ones that talk to the guys every day, see if they need anything. They're there. And I just think swapping from a fire lieutenant to a fire captain, you're only going to create more overtime with this position, being that that person's not going to be in the firehouse, where a lieutenant is a body in the firehouse, and you don't have to go and call for overtime. So I'm just trying to see with the administration, if they talk to Mr. Robichaux or the council, is there a plan, or are we just going to say, hey, we need people, we're just going to hire whoever we want? I mean, there's some of us that put our due diligence in and are ready to move up within the department, and just don't see that happening. So that's my only question.
Thank you. Councilman Black,
I see Mr. Superintendent's here.
you having comments, Mr. Robichaux?
I apologize, I didn't catch all of the statements, but I did catch the question about a plan. Because of the budget restraints, and we're not replacing a lieutenant with a captain, that's where the funding was coming from the captain's position, because it was unfunded at the beginning of the year. Ideally, and I said it over and over again, is we need to fill all 14 positions, okay, ideally, and that's what we were doing to maintain the PIL ratings. The budget restraints doesn't allow that. I understand that. Right now, in the supervisory ranks in the fire department, there's 4 people that are short, and I can't do the job of 5 people, okay? And so I'm asking to replace the captain's jobs, combining the 4 into 3 jobs. Okay. Yes, the captains will be doing the jobs of the lieutenants, because 2 of the people, because of civil service, the 2 captains' positions, one is a competitive position. There's 3 people that will be interviewing for that. All 3 of those are lieutenants. And the shift captain's job is a promotional position, so it's done by seniority, and a lieutenant will be getting that. So if the ordinance is approved today, there will be 4 openings in lieutenants. So we're trying to fill 2 captains' positions. They will be doing the job of all the lieutenants. They're going to be doing the scheduling. They're going to be doing the timekeeping and everything else. And yes, they do ride the whole parish every day, but they talk to every employee every day, where the lieutenants are only talking to people by telephone and radio unless there's an incident where they see them on the scene. So the captains coordinate it better than the lieutenants. Again, if money's not an object, I would be asking to fill all 14 positions. But the plan right now, because of the budget restraints, is to get the captains in place so we can keep the organization going and continue to respond and work.
Thank you, Mr. Robichaux. Any other questions from the table? Audience?
Yes.
Mr. Juneau?
Mr. Robichaux, are they going to be hired from within?
They have to be.
They have to be.
The only one that's not is the EMS officer. And the EMS officer is designed that we combine the job that Gina had as superintendent, and she retired last June, and nobody's been there since then. And Robin was doing both of those jobs when Robin passed away. So Robert and I were already working on combining the two jobs. That will be a competitive job that will be advertised, and the State Office of Examiner actually has to write the job description and all, but it will have to be advertised in the paper, and I don't know who that person will be, Irvin. But the two captains, the training officer and the captain, will definitely come from within.
And your intent later on is to then come back to the council and ask us to refund 4 lieutenant positions?
Yes, sir. It would be refund all 14 positions that are open right now. Okay? As soon as the budget allows for it, that's my goal, is to get us back to where we were with the PIL, people, the manpower we had, to keep the ratings we had. Because presently, with the manpower we have, I don't believe we can maintain the ratings that we did achieve.
Okay.
Any other questions from the table? The funding, where is coming out your budget?
The funding,
Coming from what area?
the funding,
General?
the funding comes from the 1% sales tax for the whole department. For these ordinances, it's mainly for the people. It's coming from the positions that are vacant. And the comment about taking a lieutenant, that's where the funding came from. It wasn't taking a lieutenant, although a lieutenant's going to be promoted, okay? The ordinance I had to find money where it was coming from to keep from increasing the budget. So yes, we move money around within positions to fund the positions, but it's all coming from the sales tax area.
Okay, we had funded budget for the firehouse at Woodlawn, and you had taken money out of that to support the fire department. Deleted half of the, I don't know how much money they have left. There can't be have that much left in there.
It's about $1.7 million.
Out of $4 million, you got 1.7 left. And
Tom,
you took
is it
that
about
money.
1.7? The funding that's left in the fire station at Woodlawn. I think it's about 1.7, Mr. John.
Okay, but anyway, what I'm saying is that we took money to not to do that project, and since that's the only firehouse that hasn't been completed on the East Bank, I mean in the parish itself is the East Bank, that the taxpayers had voted for legislation, and it passed to do that. Secondly, Point LaHash has a 10 rating, which hasn't improved, and yet we're still taking away from the east side. But that's nothing new. I think this whole setup is the way it is. But I'm totally in disagreement with that. I'm not in favor of any legislation promoting anything but doing what was proposed. And it's nothing against you, nothing against you, the director, or anything else at all, or either the fireman. But we need to be consistent, and we need to hold to what we say we need to do, and not let any of us change that and pursue what needs to be pursued. Now, I am not satisfied, and there are steps that I'm taking to deal with that. Just like I'm going to have to take steps with other issues that I have to deal with. But the main thing is the fire department now, and being a 10 is just like not having a fire department. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
You can't get no wrong with it.
As sure as the PIL rating is concerned.
But I'm
we're
just
still
saying,
responding.
this is what it is since we've been here, since the stuff been passed and the money been coming in at a rate of $7 million a year, and we're still at a 10. And that's deplorable. Nobody in Belchase would ever stand for that. No council member at this table would ever stand for that. But being the only one on the East Bank, I got to take it and suck it up. But it's not going to be stand just to stand anymore. I have drawn the line in the sand, and I'm coming out. Anybody else?
Mr. Bartholomew, I agree with you 100%, but I would like to point out that these ordinances do not take any more money from that project.
It's take away from the fire department.
Thank you.
When you take away from the fire department, you take away from its conception, what it was designed to do. Any, from the audience, any other comments?
You know, a lot of people.
Yeah, come on in.
Barry Colligan, 31975 Highway 23 in Buras. According to what we heard from EMT personnel down at the town hall meeting in Buras a few weeks ago, they are in dire need of ambulances or staffing for those ambulances. I would like to know if this council thinks it's more important to hire more or promote more firefighters than, according to D, failure to conduct services, essential services that are expected by and are essential to the quality of life and the consistency of this parish
Can I-
over ambulance services for the people.
Can I address that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Mr. Colligan, we do have an ordinance to hire three EMT basics and one EMT paramedic.
What about ambulances themselves, which are deplorable condition? I think even stated one of them was lost and can't be found.
Okay, I mean, I'm addressing your question about personnel. So that's as far as personnel goes, but as far as actual equipment goes, like I said, I don't go around fire stations and look to see what's deplorable and what's not. The director of public service and the fire chief would come to the council and ask us to fund the purchase of an ambulance if it was needed. That has never happened. So the question, I think, needs to be addressed not to the council, but to the administrators of those departments.
All right, sir.
Mr. Colligan, you are absolutely right. Because on the East Bank, we had a dispatch an ambulance to pick up a person, and the ambulance broke down on the way. That's how bad it is. It's not, and then it broke down again. So it's more than one time it has fell out of service. Now, the members have met with different members of the council to discuss these issues about cutting services in the ambulance department. That has been discussed with several council members. But I'm not in favor to do that because to me, there's no greater value than a life. Now, if anything needs to be understood, to me, you need to make sure you have services for the distance, not for those close by. Further down the river, the more probable and practical to make sure you have ambulance service, as well as on the East Bank because of the distance that you have to travel. And that's the main thing, and you have to make sure that happens. So if anything needs to be cut, you need to be cut to the closest spot possible, not the furthest.
Well, another thing that
I'll
was
tell you
brought
that
up
later.
at that meeting was that two of the ambulances had no air conditioning units working. One of them had just been recently repaired. Within a few days, it was broke again. So we got patients traveling 60 miles or more in an unair-conditioned front and back ambulances. I think they are more important than hiring and promoting more firemen that seem to be doing an adequate job in this parish right now.
Next, please. Thank you.
I just want to come up again and say I'm not against the moves in the fire department as promotions from lieutenant to captain, but it's the way they're being done. On the East Bank, the gentleman was let go or he resigned, and the position right now is on the East Bank. And like Mr. Bartholomew said, there's services needed over there, there's lieutenants needed over there, and the job that I'm the next one up, I was supposed to get over there, and I'm not getting, I think, is because the way me and the chief get along right now. I don't think I'm getting a fair shot at getting my position. He's making it all sound good up here right now, saying, oh, he needs captains and all that, it's going to follow. But like yesterday, we had a meeting, and I wasn't able to attend the meeting, so I gave my information to some of my constituents, and they brought it up. And I'm not quoting what the chief says, but he says if we keep on pushing this lieutenant's thing, he's going to defund all of them and only have captains. And I don't see that where that's fair, because we have a structure that was set up within the fire department to have certain positions, do certain things, and it's one thing after another. Why we're not promoting? Why we can't have the necessary people in place to lead the department, train the new guys, do stuff like that. I mean, the captains, they should be doing more than just riding around the parish, like Mr. Bartholomew said. I mean, our captains in Belchase and other areas, they're doing fire reports, they're doing hose testing to better the rating. I mean, just by doing hose testing and submitting certain records, you at least get a 9 or an 8. I mean, these guys are getting paid $60,000 to ride up and down the parish all day long. Sometimes we need them in the firehouse, they won't put them in the firehouse. We'll refuse to work in a fire station. And me being a citizen, I mean, that's wrong. I mean, you're the second top paid person in the fire department, and when we're short people, they'll tell me, oh, you have to work overtime. I have something to do. No, you have to. Well, the captain's, you only need one guy. Why can't the captain work? Oh, I need a captain to go to Venice, or I need a captain to go to the East Bank. And it shouldn't be like that. Here we are, budget crunch. We should be working every available employee we have to where we don't have to over budget a department. I mean, that's how it should be. I mean, everybody should work. A captain, he's a firefighter, he's a leader. I mean, he's everything. There's no reason he should not have to work if he needs to work in Venice, if he needs to work at Woodlawn, if he needs to work at Point LaHash. If they need him there, he's a firefighter. There's no reason he has to make his runs every day. I mean, toilet paper or paper towels, soap, I mean, that can wait another day. So that's my thing. I'm not against this. I think these positions are needed, but there needs to be a plan. There needs to be a plan in place on how it's going to be done and what's going to happen, not just come up here. I mean, like I said, I'm not a great speaker. I mean, he could sell anything, so he could make it sound good. So.
All right, thank you. Next, please.
Daniel Scott Lott, 9273 Highway 23. Just with you, Mr. Bartholomew, you were speaking in regards to the fire department with the 1% sales tax and stuff like that. But when it came to the public for the sales tax percent, that was for the fire department, correct?
Before we go to the sales tax, we're talking about the
monies, the funding.
No, but Mr. Blow's.
But you brought up about the
money
fundings. But
for
when
the
the
raising,
fundings,
but
that's where the
question.
fundings came, is
That's
from
not
the
question.
1%.
Excuse me. That's not the question on the table. The question was about with Mr. About the fire department.
In the monies that the fire department has
When
to
that
run their
came up,
department.
Yeah, and it came up, and I asked them where the money was coming from.
Okay. If they receive the 1% that the residents of this parish voted on, they would have plenty enough money to finish your station, plus have the funding for the 14 positions. But since the residents passed that 1%, y'all threw the EMS, the ambulance, into their payroll, plus y'all the administration charges over $1 million a year to do their payroll. So if they were able to fund their payroll through a public company, that would save them $1 million a year, and that's what, 7 years, that's $7 million. You'd have 2 fire stations on East Bank. So again, if y'all wouldn't keep taking from the fire department's 1% sales tax to fill in y'all's fallage, they would have the money to fill.
There's an ordinance on the table to rescind those things.
One sales percent.
No, I'm talking about to rescind the positions that they put into the field department. We'll see what the council going to do.
Fill their positions as well.
Next.
6P, an ordinance to amend the 2017 Boat Harbors and Shipyards Fund operating expenditure budget, Point LaHash Boat Harbor, Empire Shipyard, Buras Boat Harbor, Empire Boat Harbor, and Venice Boat Harbor departments, and to authorize an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I offer. Is there a second? Once. Is there a second? Twice. Is there a second? 3. There the lack of a. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. H-Com, second. I was ready to roll. Any questions from the table?
A little clarification in the section 1. Yeah, well,
Wait. What's the question?
Well, I was going to get to the same question, and he's going to tell you. But anyway, in section 1, we're creating 3, and then section 2, we're funding 5, and so 1 in Venice and 1 in Point LaHash. I guess the question is that do those 2 exist? And the third question the next question would be, where are we taking the funds? Because there's a blank on line number 37 that doesn't say where we're taking the funding from.
Okay, it's going to be deferred.
Okay.
But the main thing is that for you to discuss to understand that those positions has been eliminated. There are no positions, and they're trying to reestablish those positions. So they're not money is not in the budget. So that's where it has to be funded. And the only reason why it's being brought into discussion is because that we have to give everybody an idea to understand what is going on. And once we decide where we get the money from, then we'll let you know if that where the money is available. Because too many times everything will come up, a lot of us don't understand or didn't have read it or whatever. So we didn't know what it was about. So now we brought it in and it's under discussion. So anybody else have any discussion?
While we're trying to get everybody to understand, so you can get me to understand, the next time we bring this subject up, you can maybe explain to me what we're doing. We're creating 3 full-time positions, 1 in Empire, one in Empire Shipyard, and one in Buras. However, we're not creating the one in Venice and the one in Point LaHash, but we are funding 5. So you can tell me the difference between those.
Reinstating positions.
Well, I'm just reading the ordinance.
I understand what
I'm
you're-
reading the
what you're asking, I'm
legislation,
just telling
so if it's going to be deferred, I don't want to waste anybody else's time, but those will be my questions when it comes up at the next meeting.
I have no problem. Anybody else? Any questions? Audience?
Mr. Chairman, if you can go back to N, if you can go to N.
Oh, wait, we're still on the table. No,
Yeah,
Everybody have
yeah.
any more discussion? Hearing none, it is deferred. Councilman Black wish to revert back to N. Councilman Black.
An ordinance authorizing an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Offer.
Councilman Black offers their second.
Second. Okay.
Second by whom? I'll say Councilman Lepine. Councilman Black.
Yeah, this is to address the needs of 3 basic EMTs and 1 paramedic EMT.
Any questions from the table?
Just a comment to allow the public to know the way the funding is coming from. It's from the anticipated revenue from the ordinance that we passed previously on increase of fees.
Right.
Correct?
Yes, and that's going to be projected $400,000 between now and the end of 2017.
Any more questions from the audience? I'm voting no.
Noted. If you could move to K after
It
that.
passes 6-1.
And then back to K, if you don't mind, sir.
K, please.
An ordinance to amend the 2017 firefighting manpower structure and to authorize an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Offer.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? Councilman Lepine, second. Any questions from the table? Mr. Black, Councilman Black first.
Yeah, this is also addressing EMS. This is for 1 EMS officer. Basically, that's the consolidated position.
Any other questions from the table? Audience, machine is open. Voting no. Six one, it passes. Next, please.
6Q, an ordinance authorizing an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I offer. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Yes, sir.
Second by Councilman Ashcombe. Questions from the table? Audience? Machine is open.
It's
Position is funded, correct?
Passes 7-0. Next, please.
An ordinance to amend the 5-year capital improvements plan, diversion/lamp project, and the Ridge and Marsh Creation Tiger Pass project, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
I will defer this at this time. Mr. Frelish is not here, having to attend the meeting in Baton Rouge.
Next, please.
6S, an ordinance authorizing an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government for the internal auditor department and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Councilman Roussel.
I'll offer.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? It lacked for a die of a second. Next, please.
Let me just point one thing out. This is a charter-required position, it's
Mr.
funded, and we need to wake up at this table.
No,
I will
I was
second.
going to second. I mean, we're rolling so fast here. I'm trying to read.
Hey, once it comes up, it comes up. I mean, it called 3 calls went out.
I
3
asked for
calls
re-
went out, and the secretary read.
Can I ask
the
for
re-
reconsideration?
resolution, the ordinance was read. So it's not a problem with that. So Mr. Burke would like to bring it back up. All right, we bring it back up again.
I'll offer the resolution, the ordinance, excuse me. It's an ordinance to remove the hiring, the freeze on the internal auditor position, which is vacant and funded.
I will second.
Second by everybody. Second by Councilman Burt. Is there a question from the table? Audience? Hearing none, the machine is open. Next, please.
6U, an ordinance to amend the five-year capital improvements plan by appropriating $1,500,000 to the Highway 23 four-lane expansion, Port Sulphur project, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Yes, on behalf of Councilmember Salvon, I'm going to offer the ordinance. It's transportation DOTD funding for the Port Sulphur project, and so I'll ask for a second.
Second by Councilman Juno. Go ahead, Mr. Rousseau.
And so this is a project that's been long overdue, and the project is ready to move forward.
And you said the money coming from the state
The
transportation?
DOTD, yes, on line 6, whereas
Okay.
Plaquemines Parish Government has been awarded funding in the amount of $1.5 million from the Department of Transportation and Development. We're amending the five-year capital improvement plan, so the project four-laning in Highway 23 in Port Sulphur can move forward.
Okay, thanks for the reading for the audience. Audience, you have any questions? Hearing none, the machine is open.
Thank you.
Next, please.
V, an ordinance to amend the five-year capital improvements plan by appropriating funds for the payment of LERDs, lands, easements, rights-of-way, relocations, and disposal sites for the New Orleans to Venice NOV-NFL levy projects and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I'll ask Mr. L.V. Cooley. I'm going to offer this if he'll give us the numbers to fill in the blanks on behalf of Ms. Salvant. She is, as you know, sick, and I've had a discussion with Mr. L.V. before the meeting, but I'd
Is there a
like to
second?
get the blanks before I second it.
Like, anybody want a second with the blank still?
Was there a second?
No, give me the numbers so I can fill it, the blanks, and the numbers that I talked about. Line number 24, LERDs.
Testing, oh, got it, okay. The ordinance is to cover expenses for LERDs for 2017 and 2018 that are anticipated. Right now, we only have 15,900 in this account that's segregated for this purpose.
I know the explanation, but, you know, we want to fill the blanks and get a second, so can you have a discussion on the floor?
Okay, all right. The total is, we've got hard cost anticipated of about 500,000.
So on line 24 is what?
No, well, that's a number for the council to consider. There's some additional numbers that I'd like to discuss, and then you can consider which numbers you want to plug in. The numbers we
Let me do
discussed
this.
before
I'll
the...
ask for a second with the blanks, and then I'll move back for fill in the blanks.
Okay.
Is there a second?
All right, it has been seconded by Councilman Juno. Go ahead.
No, that's not going to happen. Go ahead.
Okay. We estimate hard costs now that are due to landowners for appropriations that have already occurred in 2016 and one that occurred in 2017. And right now, we anticipate we're going to have some additional court costs related to those. I would indicate that we're going to be due and having to pay out 500,000. That's an estimate. That's one number. So you add to that number additional projects that are anticipated that the Corps is going to ask for right of entry requests in 2017. One was deferred today, 582. The estimated land cost for that plus relocations is probably, and we don't know the final numbers because we haven't seen the final appraisal cost, but the estimations are 1.5 million for that. There are additional projects that we're told the Corps is going to ask us for a right of entry request, wherein we may have to acquire, expropriate lands for canal relocation purposes. And those were estimated a year ago and given to the Corps before they decided to take over the project at about 4.7 million. The total numbers that I would be suggesting for what we're anticipating as possible costs to pay out in 2017 and 2018 is 6.7 million. Now, I broke them down so you could consider which number you anticipate allowing us to fill in the blank. Are there questions?
I'm waiting for the numbers.
Well,
As
those
we
were
s-
it. You can decide. We need right now 400 to 500,000.
That's what, Mr. Cooley.
Yes.
You and I had this discussion in the back a few minutes.
500,000, I tell you, are hard numbers that I need.
That's the
to
number I
have.
want on line 24.
Okay.
And we can talk about the rest of the money when you can tell me what we're going to do with it later.
When we have hard numbers, we can do that. But I would like, at this point, to pay landowners because I'm getting the calls, and I would ask them to call you to ask you for the money.
That's fine. Give them my number.
500,000.
I'll tell them what I'm telling you. 500,000 on line 24.
Right, wherever that blank is.
What about on 32?
If there's a blank there, it's the same number that goes through the ordinance.
And where's the language to take out the BP language and put in the normal language that we normally work from?
That language was provided to you in a revised offer with changes.
You
which-
have the copy?
Yes, I provided that to you, so I can't read it because I'll give you mine.
I don't have that revised copy.
On line 12 and 13, you would strike from monies that would be deposited in the general fund, BP settlement fund. That's indicated in that revised item.
Let me say this. Because of the confusion here, I'm going to defer this item, and we're going to get it straight for the next meeting, and let Ms. Salvant handle it if she's here. If not, it'll be my intention to continue with the discussion about the 500,000 versus the 6.7 million.
That's
But in
fine.
light of what you just said about the canal in the Myrtle Grove Marina area being 1.5 million, I would like this administration and you to get together and tell me how much of that we already own, since I saw a map on television a couple of nights ago that said we already own that. I want to know how much more of it we are buying compared to what we are already supposedly owning. And I'd like to get this cleared up before we move forward on this.
That was provided in right-of-way maps that were given on the introduction to 582. Those maps are being revised as we speak by the Corps. New maps will be supplied. We'll know when they finish, maybe for the next meeting, it may be sometime afterwards. So, yes, we'll have that information for you.
At this time, I'll defer the item.
Next, please.
6W, an ordinance to amend the five-year capital improvements plan by appropriating $4,675,826 to the Plaquemines Parish Hazard Mitigation Grant Program project and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
On behalf of Ms. Salvant, I'll offer.
Offered by Mr. Roussel. Is there a second? Is there a second? Is second by Mr. Juneau. Mr. Roussel?
This is $4.675.826 million for hazard mitigation elevation program, which we have been awarded an additional funding to take care of those homes that have not been elevated at this time. And Ms. Salvant asked for us to move forward on that.
Any more comments from the table? Audience? Scene is open. Next, please.
An ordinance to amend the 2017 Solid Waste Disposal Fund, Manpower Structure and Operating Expenditure Budget, Solid Waste District 2 Department, and to authorize an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant positions of Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise to provide with respect thereto.
Mr. Ashcombe offers. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Roussel. Any questions from the table? Audience, machine is open.
Machine.
Passes 7-0. Next, please.
A resolution to rescind, annul, and set aside Resolution Number 17-121 adopted April 13, 2017, wherein there was a temporary suspension on any and all movie, television, or commercial filming in District 1 of Plaquemines Parish,
I offer.
and otherwise provide with respect
I'm
thereto.
so sorry. I
That's
offer.
okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Roussel. Any questions from the table? Audience? Go ahead, Mr. Lapine.
This is strictly District 1, correct?
We are deferring the legislation that had imposed before. We're doing the filming because of the ordinance that had been passed by this body. And at this time, there's no need to follow that because the ordinance has been enhanced and everybody can live with what has been done. Now, that's the reason. Any other questions? Machine is open. Tell it like it is. 7-0, it passes. Next, please.
In ordinance to confirm a Director of Recreation and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Yes.
Okay, I offer. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Juno. Discussion?
Yes.
On the table, Mr.
Yeah,
Russell.
come on.
You go ahead, you take it.
No, I mean, who is it? You
We
gotta
don't
fill in the
know.
blank before
Yeah.
we do the,
I know, but let me,
No, it's for the position. We don't have a position.
no,
Go ahead, Mr. Russell.
that we've already cleared this position, and Mr. Cormier could hire this position today or tomorrow if he preferred to do that. This is not a position that requires a vote. Although we voted on the last director because it was asked of us to vote, you don't have to vote on it. It's your call as to who you put in there. Right now, it's been offered with a blank, so this doesn't do anything. The position is available. Whoever you want to appoint, you can appoint. We could withdraw this, and it would be over.
Out of deference to the council, I'd like to fill in the blank with Roger Halfin. And since following protocol, since the last one was voted on, give some deference to the council in the spirit of cooperation.
I hope you
All
realize
right,
that
the
was a
blank has been-
two-thirds vote on the other ones, too.
The blank has been filled. Are there any more comments from the table? Mr. Black?
I just, no, I don't have any.
Audience? Machine is open. Excuse, Mr. Lapine, decide to give a question.
Did we decide on the salary? Was it 36?
It's 36,000 a year.
That's correct.
Councilman Lapine.
Okay.
Any other questions from the table? Machine is open. It passes 6-0-0.
Can I make a comment? Because I'm hearing a bunch of murmuring from the audience here on this thing.
Excuse me, can you bring that? That's over with. Let's move
All
on. Next, please.
7, new business. A, introductions of resolutions wherein a suspension is being sought. 7A1, a resolution approving and authorizing Thomas J. Surpass, Finance Manager, to execute a Louisiana compliance questionnaire to Cola Champagne Slavin and Company, LLC, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I offer. Is there a second? Mr. Bradshaw, seconded. Questions from the table?
On suspension.
On the suspension only. Questions from the table? Audience, machine is open. H-Con?
He's absent.
Oh, he stepped out. Passes.
A resolution approving and authorizing Thomas J. Surpass, Finance Manager, to execute a Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire to Calder Champagne Slavin and Company, LLC, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I offer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Burton. Question from the table? Audience? Scene is open. Next, please.
7C, update by administration on water compliance projects and loan application. Councilmember Roussel.
Mr. Roussel?
Yes, I think we can take C and K together because they deal with the same subject matter and they should have the same basic answers. As you know, we've been in this water compliance loan application and grant application project now for well over a year, maybe more. And from my understanding that part of the holdup is that we are producing water and 40% of the water is not being accounted for, and that's what is being asked by those individuals who are reviewing the applications. And I'm curious to know if we have found out where and what the purposes are for that 40% loss, as well as taking item number K and what percentage of that water that was written off because of the meter reader not reading the meters contributed to that 40%.
It was 4 million gallons altogether, and the total price, including water and sewage, was $42,000.
That's what was written off due to the
That is correct.
employee not reading the meters.
That's
Now,
correct.
in the scheme of things, 4 million gallons, I mean, like, what kind of percentage is that of the 40% that we losing? I mean, I'm not familiar with how many gallons we make a day. I know Bluefield used to make 3 million, Port Sulphur used to make 3 million. So that's a day.
I would have to research that for you. I'll get that answer for you.
All right, well, it gives me an idea. We lost 4 million gallons and we lost 42,000. But
yes.
Okay, we can put that on the side because I think it's probably going to be a small number when you look at the 40% of the total number that we're losing. Do we have any game plan or any idea of why we're losing that 40%? And so we can give those answers to the USDA and those that are asking the questions?
We have a lot of flushing that have to take place. We have a lot of dead-end streets, and like in Braithwaite Park, you have maybe like 3 homes back there, but you have to run the water consistently.
Right.
And I think there's a few on the lower end also.
But we've had that discussion over a year ago, and we talked about the flushing, and we were supposed to be metering the flushing, so we would know how much we were flushing.
Mhm.
Have we done that?
I think we did in some areas. I would check with Robert in the morning to make sure, but I think we did in some areas.
I guess the conversation is what I'm trying to get to is that
Mhm.
we need to get the answers for those people that are asking the questions of where the 40% is gone. I understand 20 to 25% is normal in the industry, but we got a gap in there, you know, of 15, 20%. And so I would imagine the sooner we answer those questions, the sooner we will know whether or not we're going to get the grant.
That's
And,
correct.
you know, my position has been for some time now that I'm not for any more loans. I would hope that we would take the BP money and substitute the loan that we make, and as Mr. Lawrence had mentioned, loan it to the Water Department to get this project done of the expansion of the Belle Chase Water Plant. So I'm hoping that the administration will take that seriously and move in that direction and get those questions answered so we'll know if we're going to get a grant or not. As far as the loan goes, personally, in my opinion, I think we ought to just abandon that application and move forward without getting any more loans and take the the windfall of the BP settlement and take the chunk out of there, if it's 4 million, 6 million, whatever it is, and put it towards whatever grant we can get. But we need to come to a finalization of this because this has been going on for 2 years now.
Yes.
So we got to close this gap.
Councilmember Russo, you raised some good points about the 25% loss of water being somewhat normal in the industry. We have a lot of great things about Plaquemines Parish, but when it comes to delivery of water and infrastructure, one of the challenges we have is that we're such a long parish. Unlike when you're providing water in Jefferson Parish or Orleans Parish, you've got residential neighborhoods, there's a lot of loops, and so it's easier to maintain main lines. Here you've got it's over, I know, 60 miles of line running from Belchast down to Venice, and there's no looping mechanisms because it's just, we're a long, thin peninsula. So I would simply submit that our loss would be, on average, in normal range, would be a little higher than the industry standard because of our geography.
And while I understand that, but we need to document it to make the application complete so we can answer those questions, so we can move on, know if we're going to get a grant or not going to get a grant. But thank you for those questions, those answers. At least we're making a little progress.
Any comments, other comments from the table? Audience?
Yes, Warren Lawrence, 120 Timber Canal Lane, Myrtle Grove. Again, I've talked on this issue so many times, but, I'd just like to clarify that, yes, we do have a long parish, and yes, there's some flushing that has to be done much more than in other locales, but not all locales. When you go out on Lafourche and everything else, you see the same situation where they have dead-end lines all over the place. Jefferson Parish has tons of them, but neither be the case. My consensus is that even when we had, like in New Orleans, we had lines, dead ends that went down to the Audubon Society and everything. And those lines, when we flush, we determine how much we flush. That's not unaccounted water. That's accounted for. We tell you what we use when we flush. I mean, you can, whether you put a pentameter on the hydrant when you're flushing it, or you want to take a flow rate, you flush that at 100 gallons a minute, and you flush for 10 minutes, you know how much water you flush, and you log it in. We even got to where we know what a fire department basically uses when they fight a fire, because they give a report to us to say, how many gallons a minute did the pumper pump? When they left, they tell us what to use. That's accounted for water. I don't understand, and I've come before the previous council and this council, what we don't do in this parish and have never done, we don't have a testing system to say how many meters are running at 40%, 20%, 10%, 100%. That is capable of getting done to know that is meters you reading, but the meters are not accurate. That is, to me, part of your problem. We found our problems, and I hate to say I keep saying what we did, because that's what I did when I was at the water board. When we went in and had these meters tested and everything, we found a big percentage of ours was from faulty meters not registering 100%. So we went in and did what we had to do and gained $18 million a year from it. And that's why I'm saying this study that just raised rates and didn't go back into it and follow up and say, where does the water go? We hear the excuses all the time on how much is flushed and how much is this and what's that. But when you look at a meter and it's not tested, it is going to tell you something when you test it. Either it's 100% right or it's off. All things, when they get old, including people, tend to slow down. And if you don't give them something to boost it back up and get 100% out of it, you suffer the loss. The other question I had, which I couldn't understand, was on K, loss of water due to meters not being read. I can't understand that. If a meter's not being read, and you went out and finally read the meter, you know what you were between the time you not read it to the date you read it. Whether you build them properly or not, and whether you can go back and make them pay, definitely not, because you obligated to read the meter. But it tells you what the loss was for not reading that meter. And I don't know. I just get frustrated when I come up here about water. And, you know, we needed a rate increase. We got the rate increase, and we didn't do a damn thing but suck up the money from the rate increase and then correct the situation.
Thank you. Anybody else? Next, please.
7D, District 1 update, Councilmember Bartholomew.
We are located on the east side of the Mississippi River. We have the Grand Prairie Levee District. We have all revenues. We have industries that pays taxes on the east, from the East Bank. And we need some guidance, I guess, from the administration and also some of the council members to see what we can do to make sure that we receive some assistance to provide needed service. No extras, but just needed services. Because in the last 2 years, I've been there, it hasn't happened. We just take away, take away, take away. When we first came in 2015, out of a $15 million deficit, the highest percentage of extraction of funded projects came from the East Bank. Projects was limited to none, what was implemented. Highway 15, they had money to do the last part of the highway, which was done about 60 years ago, and that money was reverted, not by this council, but by the previous council, to the northern end, which was already done. So those people got left out. The Day Event Center, which is the focal point of the East Bank, lower end and middle part of the parish, has been left out. What I said by left out, I mean we have a recreational football field that hasn't been completed. Grass has grown 10 to 12 feet high. A little train that the money was taken out for the train to ride around the track that wasn't completed. So there's nothing that has been in place put back. So I'm just saying what it is, not what I'm assuming it will be, is just what it is. And something's going to have to happen to change that kind of mentality. With that, let's move to the next item. Thank you.
I'd like to say a few comments on that. You know, well, Mr. John, I appreciate your passion and your loyalty and your dedication.
Don't appreciate, do something with it.
I'm going to tell you what I did. Now, I appreciate, you know, your loyalty, dedication to the East Bank and all. And, you know, through this time of crisis with weak finances and low budgets, I think this council did a tremendous job by stepping up and taking a lot of money that was there, that was able to be moved, and invested in the back levee over there to the tune of probably $30 or $40 million. The recreation department that you wanted, you know, that you wanted the YMCA over there, we just went ahead and we gave you what you wanted as far as that, so you could run the recreation program and buy your bus. You know, I think it's unfair to say that we don't do anything for the East Bank when I think that we've done a tremendous job of trying to fund the levee, which is the mainstay. You know, we have moved forward with the courthouse, which is another $25 million investment. So I think that the East Bank, you know, is probably not getting everything at once, but, you know, whenever it's time to look for some money, we always go to your road project to get it. And, you know, that's seems to be where you want to take it from, so we oblige you and we vote for that. So I hope that you don't really take it as we're neglecting the East Bank, because, you know, I think that my vote reflects quite well my support for the East Bank on the levee projects, on your recreation programs, and the courthouse, and all of those things. So having said that, I want you to feel like I support you.
Finished?
I'm finished.
Not correct.
Okay, the levy was done to adjudication. A lawsuit was filed. And that was a part of the settlement of the agreement in the courts, demanding that this parish reestablish the northern part of the levee, because the levee was owned by the Plaquemine Parish government. And also a suit was filed, class action suit was filed because of that. But at the end of the day, when the hearing and everything was over with, the court case was over with, it was mandated by the court that this levee be built. So it wasn't a consideration of the council administration at the time doing it. It was mandated. Now, the courthouse, the courthouse is a governmental entity of Plaquemine Parish government, and that's mandated by law that this building be built. And several times, you yourself said you was in favor of moving it, and it went 3 or 4 different times to move. So the intent of the concern was to move it, but it failed because the people didn't see justice in moving it, and it's where it is today. Now, the other issue, there was several plans that were drawn for that courthouse, was never used, so that was money wasted. Where we could accept one of the plans that was already drawn up and approved by architects, engineers, and approved by the council in the past, instead of creating another form of engineering to develop that. So it's not the East Bank, as far as the courthouse is concerned, it's the Plaquemine Parish government. So we all have ownership in the whole district because we involved in a governmental entity, in which is this government. So it's just not there for the East Bank. It's for the Plaquemine Parish government. Now, the money from the Vegetation Ridge money, the 12 million plus the other 7 million, so 19, 20 million that came out of that. The money could not be used other than levee projects. Secondly, there was money appropriated in a word bill that monies were supposed to be appropriated for the East Bank non-federal levies. But the previous administration decided to move that money to the West Bank. So that was taken. And all that's a part of the record. That's legislation by Congress. And we got the money diverted. Not by this council, but by the other councils. And yet, we talk about justice. And I do appreciate us taking the money, approving me to take the money that was left out of Highway 15 that couldn't do anything but do it other little projects because there wasn't enough money to do the extended last part of that highway. And I got to say that we appropriated that money. I think you was the president at the time, Mr. Roussel, and I was a councilman. That money was appropriated way back then. Then all of a sudden, instead of them finishing the project, they never did, they extended and put the money further north because of political reasons. We had money, millions of dollars that was in the courthouse fund that we had appropriated, over $6 million, now the fact, Mr. Roussel, when you was at the helm, that we put into the operation. All that money was displaced somewhere else. So you see, all that was gone. All that was gone. So I mean, I'm just trying to see how it adds up.
Right. Yeah, I just want to thank you for confirming my support for the East Bank.
I didn't say you supported all the way, because
You
you
just
tried to
did.
move. You just tried to move the courthouse every time it came up. Councilman Black. That's all right.
All right. I do want to correct Mr. Russo, though. It wasn't 30 million, it was 58 million on the levy.
A total of 58 million. But we you remember the case that was filed, the lawsuit that was filed? You remember that? That went to court and proved the parish at fault? So you see, that's my point. But that's all right. We can live. We're gonna have to live through that. And we're just hoping one day that if we can come to some kind of consensus that we need to really put more efforts onto the east side and create more industry and develop the infrastructures over there, because it's such a nice place to live, and because it has a lot of potentials for revenues, especially the port revenues. And by being accessible to the rail system on the east bank of the river, where we all gonna have to wind up anyway, it'll be the common sense to tell you to develop port activity for rails on the east bank rather than the west. The west bank is flooded with problems with rails. So that's a big problem. It's going to continue to do that. But anyway, I don't want to talk about the West Bank. That's not me. So that's all I have. Anybody else comment? Audience? Next, please.
7E, discussion regarding Port Eads. Councilmember Bartholomew.
Port Eads is Port Eads. It's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem because it's located on the East Bank. It's located on East Bank, and we can't even get there. But there are things that need to be done with Port East. We spend over $12 million, which I don't know how we spend $12 million in Port East, why we spent it, but we spend over $12 million to do that, and that only serve a handful of people in the parish itself. So that in itself, I think, was a mistake to do. But we have some issues, and I've spoken with the legal team, trying to come to consensus one way or the other to resolve those issues of concern. That's all I have on that.
I just want to be vocal on saying you're the only district that has a $12 to $15 million camp. But I want to know it's on the East Bank, and I want to congratulate you for having that.
I sure appreciate that because the other half is on the West Bank, and the other half doesn't belong to the East Bank. So it's an effort of some type of agreement that we made a CEA agreement from East and West. But anyway, next please.
7I, consideration of action to direct counsel in regard to litigation entitled Mike Mudge et al. Versus Plaquemines Parish Council et al., 25th JDC case number 60-909, Division A. Councilmember Trufant Salvan.
Mr. Russell, you handling that one?
Just brief discussion. We had this in executive session. An introduction was made today at the request of the council attorney and Ms. Salvant. So I'll go ahead and take this off the agenda unless Ms. Salvant wants to put it back on for the next meeting.
You want to put it back and leave it on?
No, I think we're addressing the concerns that she had with the introduction that I made earlier for her.
So you just want to take that off. All right. Next, please.
7L, update on Jesuit Bend drainage. Councilmember Burt.
Yeah, I'd just like to get an update from the administration on the notice to proceed for that project.
Councilmember Burt, I think this is the one, we do have a, there was a contractor selected, and we did get an extension just because there was back in July, we have inserted a pay when paid clause. And this is something that all the contractors do if they're subcontractors, and it's in the best interest of the people and the parish to have a similar clause. For some kind of reason, though, we just wanted to make sure that there were one or two proposals that went out where that clause was removed. And the only reason for that is so that when the feds pay us, we pay them, as opposed to us paying and then waiting for reimbursement. But we're working out the details. We've got an extension, but I hope to have that finished very shortly. If that's, I don't want to mention the contractor's name, but I'll give the initials, HR.
Hard Rock Construction.
Yeah, okay.
Councilman Burt?
So is that standard protocol for every federal project?
We've had, it's a policy, sort of what I'd like to do with this administration, and there are other places that do it, because of our charter where we're not supposed to spend money we don't have. It's a contract, part of the contract, that once we put it in our standard contract, it will protect, us in the event of delays or shortages.
So for levy projects or other projects, are we going to apply that same language?
It's my desire to have that in our standard contract, and I was told that back in July, this was put into our standard contract. There might have been some just paperwork or clerical mistakes. We just want to make sure we cross our T's and dot our I's.
So this legislation, we voted on early with LERDs, we're, I guess, advancing money for acquisition, which money we don't have. Would that fall into the same category on a federal levy project?
Yes, that's the issue, and that's why I wanted to bring this to, put this before the council so that we know. I think, it'll be our policy that good budgeting is you give full disclosure. So if the total cost is going to be 6.7 or $7 million, let everyone know ahead of time, this is what it's going to cost, let's budget for it, and that way, as the project moves forward, to pay landowners, to pay for acquisitions, there's full disclosure, as opposed to, there's another way you could do it, which is piecemeal. We come for, 1.2 million this time, and 500,000 next time, and 3 million next time, and it's, I think it's more transparent, just to let you know the total estimated cost. Now, we all know that, unfortunately, many times, it might be estimated at 6.7 million now, it might go over budget. But at least it's more honest, I think, to come and let everyone know ahead of time, to put, to do this project, whatever it is, this is the total estimated cost.
Councilman Burt?
Yeah. I think that discussion just now evolved into an earlier item that we had on the agenda about the LERDs. My concern about that full disclosure is that until we make the effort to approach the landowners and see if there's donations available, which were promised for many years, if we put the full amount in the budget, then they get expected to be paid. So, you know, I've been asking the administration, and particularly the legal department, to make an effort to those landowners to see if they are going to honor their commitment for donations. You know, this body subdivided the property, left the corridor of 150 feet all the way across the back of the property, and to our own fault, we didn't separate it, and in the ordinance that dedicated the subdivision, dedicate that for drainage. Now, you know, until we make the approach to the individuals and they tell us that, no, we got to buy it now, I don't want to put the money up, because then they have no incentive to donate it, because the money's already been appropriated, and we need to move in that direction. And I keep hearing that we don't have a final map. Well, the owners of the property know where it's going, because they subdivided it and left the corridor out of the entire subdivision across the whole back of the property. Because we all know where it's going. They just haven't said that this is it. But we need to go ahead and make that effort and approach those individuals through the legal department to see if there's going to be a donation. And, you know, I don't want to keep saying this, but we need to do it. And that way, instead of that $6.7 million that was asked for a little while ago, we might be down to $2 million or $1.5 million or whatever it is. But that's the concern I have about full disclosure. I like to have full disclosure, but I also like to play my cards to the point to where it's advantage to the government. And that advantage to the government is by pursuing those donations. This isn't even my district, but because Ms. Salvin asked me to handle her legislation, you know, we got to make that effort. And, you know, a document from the legal department or wherever it takes to those individuals seeking that donation needs to be made. And I'm asking that you do that.
Well, I can, unfortunately, aren't too many people that want to donate to the government. There was one instance, I can't remember the name of the party, who initially had discussed donating property to the parish, but when I inquired from Mr. Cooley about that, and that individual reneged or changed his mind, I guess.
Right, and I understand that one individual, but I also understand that there has never been a letter sent asking that. You know, we all talk about it, but until you get it in writing and they say, no, we're not donating, we don't know that. And we shouldn't be suspect about it not being a donation. We should think that they're honorable people and they're going to hold up to their word. And if they prove differently, so be it. Let them put it in writing, and then we'll know. And, you know, this is an old argument. It happened when we divided all of that property down there for the port. We should have easily kept that segment out and reserved it for drainage, which we do on every other subdivision that comes through here. You know, we accept the streets and we accept the servitudes for the drainage, and the subdivider has to put that up. We missed that opportunity because we didn't have the support at this table to do it. And I'm getting long-winded here, but it's getting a little aggravating to think that we haven't addressed that after all of this time. And since you're new at the game, I'm hoping that you will address it. Thank you.
I will request Mr. L.V. Cooley to send out letters requesting donations of property.
Any other comments from the table? Audience?
Yes, Warren Lawrence, 120 Timber Canal, Myrtle Grove. I'd just like to make the comment, as I've made in the past, that when they had the area going for the West Bank levee system between Captain Lowry's and going back down to toward Venice, they asked for an alignment. We had public hearings. They got the alignment. The Corps told us they needed, it was a responsibility of the parish to get the right-of-ways. At that time, they went to Citrus Land, and Citrus Land donated to this parish the existing levees along there that was supposed to coincide where these levees would go. And at that time, the parish accepted it, and they now own those levees. Now the Corps is coming back and saying, no, we're making a realignment. We're not following what we told you to get. Now we want you to go out and spend money to put it in a different location. And you know, it's just not a situation where when we attended public hearings and where the thing was ultimately given as a location for it to be, now you come back without public hearings. You're going to buy it from Mr. White, from two politicians that sit in this parish, relocate a boat shed and everything else. The original alignment that the Corps of Engineers asked for and got the right-of-way for did not require that to be done. I don't want the alignment where it's at, but I got to suffer for where it's at. Now you're doing it again, and somebody's benefiting from it. As a citizen, I'm just saying that this is you're smoking, flying all over the place, and we don't know. Every time we're told, well, where is the alignment? They don't know. They were told we was going to shut off our roadway going into our subdivision, and they were going to relocate that roadway to the center road, which is a private road belonging to Mr. Nungesser. We got with the Corps of Engineers, and they say they're not going to do it. But until I see the plan, I don't believe them. So, you know, we as citizens living in an area, we are not, you think the the East Bank's not represented. We're in the middle of the parish. We're not represented too much either. Corps of Engineers does what they want. This parish even passed an ordinance, said, hold up, do not do anything between mile marker 58 and mile marker 60 until you answer the questions, hydraulically and everything. Not one of those questions been answered, yet they're moving forward and they want to buy land. I just ask in behalf of the citizens that live down there, give us a shot and look at what is going to happen to us. We don't know. We bought land, we had drainage, and it was supplied by the parish. Now you're cutting us off. And we can't get updated information on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. I really appreciate your comment.
Yes, I'd like to thank you for your comments as well, Mr. Lawrence. And on that point that you raised, I've been told several times when I first took office, I wanted to analyze this and get more public feedback and comments. And I was informed by legal counsel from the Corps and also from CPRA that they referenced me to an agreement that was signed by a prior administration before my father, saying that no, Plaquemines Parish government is obligated from this prior agreement to do these things. And so it puts the administration, it ties our hands, and that's why I just wanted to put the full amount up front, because it's unfair to say, you know, to piecemeal this. It's a decision that was floodplain. Growing up in this parish all my life, that was always floodplain. And I'm fine if this honorable council wants to and put the money, and we're getting some leverage. I mean, the feds are paying for this. So you can see the argument. There's arguments to be made. And I'm certainly not against it, but it's just I want to make sure that this is transparent as to what took place before, and then the situation this administration is in, which is the agreement's already, we already was signed up for this, and so when we do ask questions, then the next thing we're told, well, you're slowing it up, you're putting the federal funding in jeopardy, and so nobody wants to put federal funding in jeopardy. But it's a I guess a situation where we've been put in the canoe and shoved off into the river, and we weren't given the best paddle.
Well, and I would just like to say is that, and I think Mr. Russo expressed it also, we seen drawings that the canal was relocated. Now they put a fire station there, so they had to offset it for the fire station. It was going in front of boathouses. Now it's going in back to boathouses. The boathouses have to be new and put in another location. But the public has never seen any of this. Somebody, we're asking, and I'll gladly send you some to ask to come before our association and give us an update. Bring the Corps with you. We've asked questions of the Corps to do a hydraulic study on what effect that's going to do to us for 8 years now, and we have never gotten that hydraulic study. Right now we're fighting with the diversion, they just come out and took surveys because they forgot to take the effect that diversion's going to have on Myrtle Grove with the elevation of water when it discharges, that how much it increases. Now they're looking at it. And we're just saying we shouldn't be doing this on our own. It should be our government protecting us. But I mean, it's good that we take an active part in it because we want to protect our investment. Before the diversion, I'm not so worried about I'll be dead before it's ever built. But I mean, it's still, I'm leaving something for my children. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Next, please.
7M, update by Mike Metcalf on the FEMA flood maps. Councilmember Rousseau.
Yes, as you know, we've been having this on the agenda for quite a while, trying to get something resolved. I've asked that the administration provide me with an ordinance and the flood map so we can adopt them inside the 100-year protection, regardless of whether anybody's going to recognize them or not. I want to be able to say that, yes, Congressman, we have adopted our flood maps. We want your help on getting our FEMA flood elevations recognized, our insurance companies recognizing those flood rates inside 100-year protection. So with that, I know there may be someone that would like to comment about the burden that it puts on them, but where are we with getting those flood maps and that ordinance prepared?
Well, I can tell you that as of yesterday afternoon, that task has been completed. As I updated at the last council meeting, it was a little arduous, a little harder that you would anticipate to get something like that done, but it is done. I've worked with FEMA for the past few weeks, and as of yesterday afternoon, we now have a FEMA-approved amendment for the partial adoption.
Great. So I'll be able to introduce that?
Should be. I have, as I would with any ordinance that I had anything to do with drafting, I have forwarded it to the legal department and the administration. Because it is FEMA approved, I wouldn't suspect that there would be any issues there, but certainly now that it's finished, barring any other issues, which are unforeseen to me, I would think it would be available in plenty of time for adoption.
Great. I'd love to have it introduced. And go ahead.
And if I may, and this is why, and I think, and I'll be endorsing Councilman Burt's introduction. I would simply like us to ask, because again, the ultimate goal here is lower flood insurance rates for all of us, and that's where we would benefit from help from experts in D.C. on the Hill who can tell us what's the latest with the National Flood Insurance Program. How is it going to be reauthorized? How is it going to be reauthorized? And make sure that we're not taking a false step. Because, again, ultimately this is in the hands of Congress. And I'd rather have some expert guidance or as to make sure that we don't take a false step. I can't, that's where, benefits to having someone who knows, who's up there and knows and can advise us.
Any other comments from the table?
I think we have someone in the audience. Ms. Kiff might want to give a horror story that she's living right now with this FEMA issue.
Hi, my name is Joyce Kiff. I live at 109 East Y Street. I have been paying an outrageous amount for flood insurance. I'm in the worst zone that I guess can be. I had to just recently, last year, raise my deductible to $10,000 just to get me to a $1,300. So, I mean, I'm just wondering, I know the maps are out there. I just want to know, where do we stand as to possibly adopting? I know Jefferson and Orleans have already done this. I know the issues that we're having with our parish, the way it's designed, but I'm just wanting to know, where do we stand?
Well, first of all, Ms. Kiff, let me give you my apologies. That's a horror story. And I think at the last council meeting I read where it was, I think there was one amendment to the National Flood Insurance Plan back in, I want to say 2012. I read it into the record. I don't have that paperwork with me this time. But currently, I spoke with Congressman Scalise. I attended a meeting that he sponsored here in the New Orleans area, where he brought down Chairman Duffy from Wisconsin, who's head of the committee overseeing the National Flood Insurance Program. And that program will run out. The current NFIP program will terminate, I want to say it's September or August. Might be September. And right now Congress is debating. You're not going to see, even if we were to adopt, it's been told to me, even if we were to adopt different, piecemeal maps,
Right.
it's not going to change anything before the end of this period of insurance period, a term of insurance. Now, the big fight is up there, and that's why I'm happy, Councilman Byrd, and I'm sure we'll have the support of the council on this, to have someone up there in D.C. lobbying for us so that we don't have these situations. Orleans Parish, Jefferson Parish, all have lobbyists up there working. As a matter of fact, it was Orleans that they were pretty successful last time in amending some language in the National Flood Insurance Program that we benefited from as well in Plaquemines Parish. But it's, we live here on the coast, and we all need flood insurance. And so I'm sorry about that situation. We are, at this time, though, I think the best course of action, and we do have some information from Mr. Metcalf, and we'll run that through. It's just I want to make sure that what we do is corresponding with what's going on up in D.C. Because ultimately they're going to make this new law, this new program, and we want to make sure we're doing what's most advantageous for all of us so that we can all get the cheapest flood insurance.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kip.
Any other comments from the audience? Next, please.
Defer.
And deferred.
7O, discussion of disposal of solid waste. Councilmember Roussel.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that the administration was working on this issue. I heard about it a couple of days ago, and, we've discussed this several times about what we are going to do with this issue, and I spoke to you yesterday, so it's on your plate now. Hopefully, we'll make some progress.
Yes, and thank you, Councilmember Roussel, and thank you, Councilmember Juneau, for calling that meeting about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, because it was brought to our attention that one of our waste disposal sites may have some issues, without getting into details, as that involves another department, a state entity, and without having all the information before me. But I agree, we need to have alternative plans in case a state entity does take some further action.
All right.
Any comments from the audience? At this time, I'd like to revert to item 5. Introductions of ordinance and resolution. Councilman Black, you have any? I'm reverting to, do you have any? Mr. Levine? None. Urban? None. Mr. Roussel?
None.
I have 2. An ordinance to amend the 2017 General Fund Manpower Structure, Operating Expenditure Budget, Ferry Department, otherwise authorizing an emergency exception to the hiring freeze currently enacted on all vacant position of the Plaquemines Parish government, otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance authorizing directing the parish president on and on behalf of Plaquemines Parish government to enter into and execute any and all agreement necessary for the proper and formal acceptance of the dedication of and granting of servitude for public road by the owner of the property through, on, and over which is present a Liverday subdivision Liverday Lane located in Phoenix subdivision, otherwise to provide with respect thereto. That's all I have. Mr. Burt, you have any additions? Mr. Ashcombe, you have any addition? Number 8, please. I'm sorry, hold on. Mr. President, you want to do your address?
Yes. We'll try to be as quickly as possible. First of all, I attended a meeting with the Corps, the Water Resources Reform and Development Act, WRDA, Section 7001 workshop, and this is where I'd like the honorable members of the council and also any members of the audience, if you have any ideas or proposals that would benefit Plaquemines navigation, flood risk management, aquatic ecosystem restoration. This program is something we can submit to try to get congressional funding for. The deadline is August 9th, 2017. And so along those lines with insurance, it could also go for flood risk management. But I'm looking for proposals and ideas. We've been pondering some things, but we know we don't know everything, and so any input from the citizens and from the council would be appreciated. Again, that deadline's August, so we'd have to act quickly. Next thing, positive report. In the legislature in Baton Rouge, we've been tracking diligently House Bill 456, which could have had devastating effects for one of our main revenue streams in the parish. And I'm happy to report that the bill was voted. It got 50 yeas and 45 nays. So luckily for us, because it was a constitutional convention bill, it required 2/3 vote, so it failed. But we have to remain vigilant. This is what has been a major funding source for this parish, so we have to be vigilant. It did get a majority vote in the legislature in Baton Rouge, but we can't let our guard down because, as you can tell, it got a majority vote. It just couldn't meet the 2/3 vote, and that would have had devastating effects on this parish's finances. And then, if I may, if you could, yes, you can go to the next. Just wanted to, again, our parish is sort of, was like the state. We're heavily dependent on oil and gas sector. And it's something that, we want to diversify our economy. It's going to take time to do it. But just given, those prices are out of our control. For example, in 2008, oil was at $145 a barrel. And in 2016, it was at $26 a barrel. Now, our economy, our revenue streams, our budgets, our operating expenses have all been so contingent or dependent upon what the price of oil and gas was or is at the time. And this is something I just want to put out for everyone to know and to acknowledge. Since we can't control the price of oil and gas, we need to ask ourselves, what can we control? And we can control planning for capital improvements, operations and maintenance, and revenue management. For example, the Plaquemines Levee Board District. This issue came up with LERDs earlier, and we're going to see this issue repeating itself because for example, the last time CPRA came and spoke to us with some of the new flood protection services that are coming online, they're estimating that our operating O&M, operating and maintenance, will go up to about approximately $6 million a year. And right now, we've not identified a revenue stream other than potentially oil and gas prices going up to service that need. Now, before I go to if you'd like further information on this, there's a couple books, but if you do an internet search on boom bust oil prices and economic cycles, you can find a whole host of information on this. And before I move on, I do think at this time we're at a cycle here where oil prices, we hit the bottom, and now, back in 2016 when it hit $26 a barrel, I do think we're going to be on an upward trend. Many people are speaking about that, but it's going to take how long until prices go back up higher? Again, that's out of our control. Can you go back to the next one? I chose, there's an old, I forget the name of the philosopher, but if you don't know your past, you won't know where you're going. If you don't know your history, you won't know where you're going. Now, we can choose different years. Since 2008 was a record high time for oil prices, I chose 2011. And since that time, prices were going down. We hit a high in 2008. I think about 16, 15, we hit the low. So now we should be back up on an upward trend. But when it comes to our, and we've done this before in the past. I think it was President Petrovich and the council back then, had to do record high layoffs back in the 80s. And what happens is in those times, or we hope and pray that there's no major hurricane or storm. But at the same time, we need to try to be as well prepared as possible, because, again, we can anticipate certain needs. And again, June 1 commenced hurricane season. So that's what we're preparing for. If we could go to the next one. Next one, please, Jenna. Again, the heavy equipment comparisons, and I bring this out just again to give us some context of what we had in heavy equipment in 2011 compared to what we have now. Go to the next one. Pump station operators. There are 22 pump stations in operation at present in Plaquemines Parish. We have only 16 operators, 5 operators and 2 foremen, 7 in total are retiring soon. This will leave only 11 operators. Our mechanic is out. He's out for 5 months. Since 2011, Plaquemines Parish government has acquired 4 new pump stations from Citrus Lands. And we have incurred the liability of maintaining and operating those pump stations, but we haven't hired any new pump operators. And it's, again, that's why I brought back, it ties in with the prior conversation over the LERDs, because clearly, and I'm fine with that desire to improve a certain area of the parish, and whoever's there. But let's just be forthright with what we're doing, because this was an acquisition of 4 new pump stations. Prior to that, these were private lands, and the parish didn't have to pay for the operation, or wasn't worried about the flooding in that area. And that leaves us with the question of, given the shortage of, we're going to be left with 11 operators, 22 pump stations, obviously the math is quite clear. There's a shortage there. I reference Orleans and Jefferson parishes because I believe in Orleans, and I think Mr. Simpson can speak more about that. I've been told that in Orleans they have backup operators, and they have operators at the pump stations 24/7. Go to the next. This is our. This is the number of pump stations in the parish. We have some one pump in Belchas 1 that needs some repair work. We've got a pump in Scarsdale that had some Hurricane Isaac damage that needs to be fixed. For the most part, though, most of the pumps are operational. Could go to the next one, Jenna. This is a list of the responsibilities and duty assignments. Belchase number 1. We have some great pump operators. We're thankful to have Mr. Kiff, Mr. Ott, Mr. Wallace, Davis, Guerra, Smith, Augustus, Battle, Johnson, Silv, Bachner, Silv, Bulot, and several others. And what we do have from this list, though, you can see, we have the WX Street, the Engineers Road Pump Station, does not have anyone assigned to it. The Empire Shipyard doesn't have anyone assigned to it. Oakville and Hero Canal, these are some of the new acquisitions, does not have anyone assigned. And then we've assigned Mr. Martin Johnson, who's at the Myrtle Grove Wilkinson Canal pump, with a new Wilkinson pump station. He may be, it's my appreciation, he will be retiring soon. And we have at the other new pump station, Point Celeste, Mr. Silv. The point being here is that these gentlemen here are the only people, well, first of all, we don't have enough to man every pump station. And second of all is they're on their own. And so if one gets sick, or if, we've had a recent spat of rains, and I'll let Mr. Simpson, if you could come up and elaborate upon that, we don't have any backup. So there's no room for error, and moving into hurricane season, again, I pray that we're spared any hurricane or any storm event. But I definitely want to put everyone on notice that this is the state of affairs, and it's to say that it's lean is being generous. But Mr. Simpson, if you would.
With the anticipation of the retiring of the 5 pump station operators and the 2 foremen who also operate pumps for us, I would ask that the council would seriously consider creating and funding 5 positions of pump station operator so that we can get those guys hired, trained, and in place so that there's no lapse when these guys do retire. And Mother Nature's not going to wait for us to hire and train somebody to run a pump. And we can't just throw somebody in there without any experience and have them tear up millions of dollars worth of equipment.
I have a couple questions. Appreciate the slideshow there, President Cormier, but have you guys, you haven't requested any of these operators from this council. So I think the council will be more than willing to fund these operators, but, you got to put something in writing to us. Don't come up here and blame us for it. Give us some proposals.
No, by all means, Councilman Byrd, this was informational. I'm not blaming anyone. And pardon me if I didn't make that clear enough. I just wanted to let you know that we will be coming and asking for some pump operators and be requesting your consideration for this. And I know the big problem, the reason why we didn't submit anything today is, and I'm cognizant of the issue, is we were trying diligently to find, we don't have that many vacant budgeted positions. So really and truly, the problem here is finding a funding source. And so, but I wanted to lay this out, and please, if any of you have any ideas, love to hear them. Naturally, I guess the bigger picture is my read on we don't have an economic advisor, but I think it stands to reason. My read is that at a certain point, oil and gas prices are going to go up again. We have secured, with the council's help, we've secured a revenue stream for the next 5 years that will sort of, I think, help carry us along to where when oil and gas prices do go up, then, we'll have a little more help on that end. I'm just asking for a broader, that we look in terms, think in terms of broad economic cycles on this, because I think we all, and I'm guilty of this as well, we tend to look right at the immediate time and not look at what happened before and after. And so by broadening our perspective and saying, okay, what are oil and gas prices going to be doing in the next 3 years? And given those trends of boom-bust cycles in oil and gas, and I think that's noted by the price, 2008, $145, 2016, $26. I think we're seeing another upward trend, and naturally, and for our purposes, it isn't going up quick enough, but I do think in the next 5 years, you're going to see that other cycle start to go in to where we've hit bust and now it's going trending back to boom. Ideally, it makes the council's job difficult, it makes the administration's job difficult, and that's why I would love to see a containerized port develop, because then our revenue stream would be somewhat insulated from just being so heavily dependent on oil and gas. The problem is we're and I say we as a group collectively, is we're being thrust into situations where we can't control oil and gas prices, and that's been a major revenue stream for us. So then we react on the backside, which is the operating and expenditure side. And so, any help on exploring all options, and I know there are different views, and I'm not saying I have the only view. I love to hear other views on what other, there are other revenue options, to consider. And, I certainly, not saying, I just wanted to propose one, but any help that I could get on identifying funding for these pump operators, I'll be all ears.
I just have one more statement, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
A few of those pump stations, they have self-acting actuators, right? They kick on automatically?
The Empire, little 12-inch pump in the Empire Shipyard does, and one of the pumps at West Point Lahash does. And that's currently under construction, so all that's going to change for right now during the construction. And then it's going to go back to having one electrically driven pump that's on a float switch. But it still has to have somebody monitor it, and if the rainfall exceeds the rate that that pump can pump, the diesels have to be activated, and that has to be done by personnel.
Any other questions from the table? Mr. President?
And lastly, just to end on a positive note, I want to commend several of our employees and also one of our council members. The Office of State Fire Marshal awarded certificates of recognition for meritorious service during the Great Flood of 2016. And the first one recognized was Councilmember Charlie Burt. Mr. Vincent Frelish was recognized. Mr. Scott Roussel was recognized. Mr. Lionel Serpez Jr., Mr. Lionel Serpez III, Mr. Robert Spears, and on this point I'd ask for all of your prayers. Mr. Spears is under medical care right now, but he's making a speedy recovery, but prayers are requested so that he's out and back to work soon. And Mr. Danny Spears, his brother. And so I've got some, State Fire Marshal sent some pins, and I don't know if Councilmember Black, if he, maybe, I know you might see Mr. Spears.
Great.
Soon? Yeah. Thank you.
You finished, Mr. President?
Yes.
How long does it take for us, for you to get those guys certified, or lady or when certified to our pump operators?
It depends on which station they're assigned to run.
So we have different tech skills at different pump stations.
The more complicated or complex the station is, the longer it takes to train the guy. Of course, it also depends on his mechanical ability too.
So give us an idea, because I'm assuming that we're going to have these people ready before those people retire. They have to go through training to come in and take over.
That's what I'm basically asking for, is to try to get somebody on board so that they can be trained, so when the day that the guys leave, the operators leave, you'll have somebody already in place trained to run those stations.
They had officially turned in their thing for retirement?
I have one operator that has officially signed his retirement papers, and he is leaving June 18th.
Okay, so that's one leaving June.
That's
8th.
one. There's 4 more operators that's leaving in December of this year.
So a total of 11 people, 11 pump stations won't have operators.
Correct.
When the 7 retire plus the
Correct.
4. So how would you manage just with 5?
Well, no, these 5 are to replace the ones that are leaving, and then you hire additional ones.
Okay, so you would have to have 11 people to replace
Yes.
these pump stations.
Yes.
Eventually,
Yes.
to make sure that everything is covered.
We have to.
Yeah,
You have
yeah.
to have a human to run it.
See, I just want to make sure that we understand that we're looking at in the long run, we're looking at 11 people to fill in those
Yes.
positions. Okay, thank you.
Let me ask you something.
Yes.
You said one's leaving in June, so that's the most important one, because he won't be here during hurricane season. The other 4 are leaving in December. That's after hurricane season. So you need one now.
Need
You don't
4.
need 5.
5 now.
Yeah, you can get 5, but you need 1 to replace the one that's leaving in June.
Correct.
And if it takes 3 months for them to be trained, then we can look for some to replace the other 4 in the next 3 months, but you need 1 especially for the June retirement.
It's easier for my department to absorb the loss of one operator than it is to have 4 or 5 or 6 leave at one time.
Yeah, I agree, but we are gonna have enough here for the hurricane season.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
We have 4 pump stations now that doesn't have operators. Right now, you have 4 that need to be filled.
Right, and that's gonna have to
4.
be supplemented
So the
with
other man
guys-
leave in June, so that's gonna make it 5, not 1. You talk about 5. Yeah, you gotta get them in now, because there's no one there now. They need to be done now, expeditiously.
So I guess that was my point earlier was, if we have 4 pump stations that are vacant, have no operators, this should have been brought to this council several months ago.
Back when Amos Cormier Jr. came into office, I had sent out, Kurt was the council chair at the time, I had sent out an email to all the council members with a report requesting additional personnel. And I had also reached out to Kurt, emailed it back to him, and asked him if he would please distribute a hard copy to you guys so that y'all could see it. And I don't know the results of that, whether it was actually done, but it was in a report that was generated at the beginning of 2016.
I don't recall seeing that.
I remember seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I did, that's all.
Yeah, my point is, it wasn't introduced at the table.
That was introduced because I think we were going through the budget crisis and eliminating all these positions and everything else, and we didn't want to entertain that.
It was for informational purposes for you guys, just to bring you up to speed, because some of y'all were new to the council. So just to bring you up to speed on it.
All right, any other comments?
If
Yes,
we may just read into the record an introduction now, we'll leave funding blank. We'll figure out the funding later. I'll put it in writing here.
We'll come right back. We'll move to the minutes. We have an offer in a minute. Is there an offer for the minutes? Mr. Roussel moved that second. Second by Lapine. Mr. Lapine, Councilman Lapine, all in favor of approving the minutes? The machine is open. Seven zero.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to revert back to item 5. Well, let him write his, I can read mine. An ordinance to amend the 2017 general fund operating expenditure budget, coastal zone land department, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
We're waiting on the president for his amendment, for his introduction.
It depends on what it says. If it's one position, that's one thing. If it's 5 positions, it's another thing. The one I just introduced is for paying the pump contract that we've been having with Suffolk West to run the pump back there off of Walker Road that we hadn't paid 16 or 17. And it's a big chunk of money.
Go fast.
We're in the contract. Yeah, contract. It says we're gonna pay that. And we already owe, we already own. For what, right. Yeah, it's blank now.
An ordinance to hire pump station operators and to provide with respect thereto. Any other Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. H. Coleman has made a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lapine. Machine is open. Council meeting has adjourned at 3:27.